Hundreds of years before Jesus was born, the Old Testament prophets predicted aspects of his genealogy.
So this is inevitably going to be a circular argument, but let's take a look anyway.
All the way back in the fall of Genesis, God promises that he's sending a savior through the seed of the woman that will bruise the head of the serpent.
So number one, that is most definitely not what that verse says. In Genesis 3:14, God's speaking to the serpent, and he says he's going to put enmity between the woman and the serpent, and then between the serpent and her offspring. And he will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. The serpent here is not the devil. Her offspring is not a savior. It's just about humans and why they don't like snakes. Later, Christians read into the verse that the serpent was the devil and that the offspring was Jesus. They then imagined that the sentence had the offspring defeating the serpent. That's all meaning imposed on the text. You can't make an argument from that meaning because that's the meaning that you gave to it. Also, even if this was a kind of prophecy, how hard is it to prophesy that any particular person is going to be a descendant of Eve? According to the Bible, everyone is a descendant of Eve.
Then when God singles out Abraham, God promises Abraham that by his seed, the entire world would be blessed.
Again, not about Jesus. In fact, it's not about any single person. God says that through Abraham's offspring, he will bless the world. But it's clear here that offspring is plural. As a matter of fact, if you go back a verse, you can see that God has promised that he will make the offspring of Abraham as numerous as the stars. This is a verse about God blessing the world through the nation of Israel, not through some single savior figure. Again, Christians have taken this verse out of context, projected a meaning onto it, and then make an argument from the meaning they have projected.
Later in Genesis, when the Old Testament patriarch Jacob is on his deathbed, he blesses his sons and prophesies that the Messiah will come from the tribe of Judah.
So this is a narrative written after the rise of the Davidic kingship in order to make it appear that the Davidic kingship was prophesied. It's not about any divine savior figure. It's about one tribe and its leaders taking over control of Israel. Later, Christians read Jesus back into the verse and then pretend to be surprised at what they found there.
Moses promises that one day in the future, God will send a special prophet that will bring salvation to his people.
This text, also written after the fact, has Moses predicting the coming of later prophets, not a savior figure.
400 years after Moses, God promises that the Messiah would come from the offspring of David.
The reference verses are specifically about Solomon, as is specified in verse 13, because Solomon built the temple. More broadly, it is about David's descendants, to whom God promises eternal reign. Turns out that didn't happen. Whatever else is to be said about it, not about Jesus.
Is that why the Gospel of Matthew, which is the first book in the New Testament, opens with the statement, "This is the genealogy of Jesus Christ"?
Do you know how Matthew got the genealogy of Christ? Because it's not by going to Ancestry.com. It's by going to the Hebrew scriptures, reading Jesus into all of these passages, and then making the genealogy on the basis of those earlier passages. So is it surprising that Matthew's genealogy traces Jesus' family history through these figures? No. Matthew presents Jesus' genealogy as the genealogy of the Messiah because he believes that Jesus is the Messiah, not the other way around. And honestly, Christians should stop pretending that they get to the conclusion the other way around. Jesus is disappointed. Do better.